I'm with you.
Hello, how are you?
Hello. I'm good. How about you?
I cannot complain. I'm still breathing. That's all I can say today. So, we start these by me asking you to tell us your name and share anything with us that you want us to know that will help us get to know you a little bit better. So, please tell us your name.
All right. My name is Mitchell Carraway. I am from Kinston, North Carolina. This is on Eastern North Carolina for the people that may not know. Um, Born and raised, have never left North Carolina. I've lived in North Carolina my entire life, from the East Coast all the way to Charlotte now. Uh, I was an educator by trade. I've been in education my entire life, from kindergarten with a private pre-K all the way up through now being I'm a ed tech director for a school network here in Charlotte, or a public charter. So I just guessing. I came through North Carolina Central University. That's where I got my bachelor's and my master's. I'm a member of Omega Psi Phi. Been there since 2003. And trying to think. For the most part, I've engaged in different groups and things of that nature over time. Between being on district equity teams to just merely like dealing with other things within tech and things of that nature, and the various different organizations that you're involved in with that. Um, had a wide span. I always looked at myself as saying I'm a constructivist, and I have a heart with a passion for making sure everybody really wanting to make sure the underserved are served, making sure that everyone's heard, and that people truly have what they need to progress as they should.
So, in the grand scheme of what that means that you just said just now, so so you've been an educator your whole life. So you were teaching when
Hmm.
you came out the womb. You had a piece of chalk and you were writing on the board as you came out the womb.
Hmm.
You were ready. So as an educator, what are the issues that you see in education? What are the concerns that you have in education as a father and as an educator?
Um, as an educator, I think one of the biggest issues, I think what was it? We had the whole achievement gap and things of that nature, which is usually like your spot where you hear like, oh, the achievement gap, and the digital divide. But I think those all come back to like the underwhelming or overwhelming like sense of, I always think it's access. If you give if you give children um, access to what they need, and need is relevant. Like, so if my kids may need less than another child, so I think it's very important to not only figure out, or I think that gap is access, and making sure like all kids have access to exactly what they need so that they can progress, so they can grow the way they need to grow, not so Johnny can grow just like Billy. No, like they're different kids, and I think in life at times we do good jobs of saying, oh no, that's not for him, that's not for this person. But for some reason in education, it seems to be like a consistent issue where like we're giving the same information to all the kids in the same way, and it's you just leave it up to them to say, all right, great, did you get it? And when they don't get it, then they're put on I'm not saying like a track, but then they're deemed as they don't understand, they're behind,
Mhm.
not necessarily that they don't have what they need, so they can't access the information or the knowledge of that information appropriately because they don't have what they need. So I as an educator, my biggest thing is access, access, access. And even in these current times, it's been even more of an issue. Like just thinking about like how can you hold kids accountable in passing a grade if in fact the last quarter of their entire year was flipped upside down, and they were made to understand something completely different, and made to experience something in a different way. And while everybody got that initial like boom, nobody's going to school, you have some kids that were out there that were more prepared than others to deal with it. And as educators, it was one of those things of like, how do you then track that, which I think is going to probably be a whole other issue going into the following years of this time frame. I think we'll be feeling this these 3 months that we were out of school. We'll be feeling this for a much longer time. As a father, my concern with my boys, and I have two boys, 9 and 6 as of yesterday. My youngest turned 6 yesterday. But
Happy birthday.
thank you, thank you. I'll make sure he knows. But for my boys, I want to make sure it's a fair fight. You know, I want to make sure they have a fair fight in this world of education. And I think that's across the board, probably with anything. That's what I want. That's what I wish for my boys now in school. That's what I wish for them follow from this point on. Like school, outside of school, work, marriage, whatever. I want it to be a fair fight. And I think even with education, even as coming from the educator's aspect or view of it, it's still the same thing. It's still access, but just I want my boys to have a chance, a fighting chance. Because really, once you give, you've seen things in time where the quote unquote kid that was not supposed to make it makes it because of course there's some determination there, but he had a fighting chance. That someone decided to reach out a different way to reach this child, and that gave them that chance to make sure they could close the gap on their, like, even if it was on their own. They were given those tools to actually close that and succeed. And the unfortunate piece is that that's just not across the board. I guess it's like the overarching thing there to say, like, how do you close that, or as a system, a whole system rather.
So being in education for as long as you have been in education, I'm sure you are familiar with some of the challenges that Black and brown children experience in school, right? So, you know, in school suspension, expulsion, suspended, whatever it is, you know, missing class time, struggles with always having enough, you know, whether that's enough to eat or enough understanding or enough time. Where you see that going in the coming years?
That's an interesting question, especially with where we are now and the question mark of what that looks like going forward. In the coming years, if we move forward with what we're doing, which honestly, deep down in my heart of hearts, there's no true answer. Like, I hope they don't make us go back into the school right away. But if in fact that is the answer, let's say we stay home until who knows when. Like, what if we stay home to 2021? With those kids, like with the kids, the children of color, like I think that's probably like one of my biggest things that keeps me up at night right now. Trying to figure out the best way and like thinking of, okay, this works, and then coming back and being like, no, it doesn't. Or this is the answer, or things of that nature. Like for instance, my school, we made sure all the computers were passed out to all the children that needed it. We made sure we ended up ordering hotspots to make sure school, like households that did not have connection could have that. And that was our quick fix. But what was missed was more along the lines of, all right, what about the kids the parents who don't have access to email consistently? Right. Like, and all right, and what about a parent that phone got turned off, or something of that nature? Then it's like, how are you communicating with them? Who has the communication with them? And like, who has that touch point to make sure that this child is succeeding, period, across the board? And I think moving forward, the only way for us to effectively, like, not necessarily manage, but like, manage that. The most effective way to manage the idea that all children and these children of color, that whatever state that they're in, like, I think the way to effectively do that is going to, like, that touch point, that moment where you're reaching out to figure out what someone truly needs, is going to have to go through the roof. because with the current place where we are now, if you don't make that attempt, it fails, and that child, those children are left. They're left out there. And honestly, I think during this time we learned just how many more kids we had that weren't reporting it first, because pride's a real thing, and people will tend to say, no, I don't need help, until they're hit with a moment like this where we got so many more people saying they needed help that we did not know of during this time frame that it was sad. It made me feel like, as an educator or a Black male educator, I have not done everything I needed to do, because there's people out there that I did not know in my school, in my community rather, that needed help, and that came out with staff and students. So back to like I guess the main portion of that question, like, where do I think that's what you said. I've been rambling now. Where do I see, like, what do I see, like, people, like our children of color moving? I think this could be good if, in fact, we have the efficient amount of people willing to create those touch points, willing to continuously stay in constant communication, overly communicate rather than anything else, and as well as making sure that somebody that family knows they can trust, and be open and share.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things throughout the history of education hurt that relationship to an extent. So like being that person that they can depend on, and them knowing, not even depend, but being that person that they know that they can depend on to be heard. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like, if that happens, if we can have that, at least we know moving forward how we can help, who we need to help, and things of that nature. But it requires a willing community, or not even a community of like the kids, but a willing community of educators to do so.
No. It used to be that time when we said it took a village to raise a child. And I think we're moving more and more to our own little cubicle, and we're going to raise our children ourselves. But let me ask you another question. What's the difference between public school, private school, and charter schools in the elementary space?
In the elementary space, public to private, and I think that kind of involves, so like public to private goes hand in hand with charters as well, because charters also are public and private. We're a public charter versus some charters being private. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if just separating it from that, honestly, I think it goes right back to access. For me, it's private schools create access and great opportunities and all these different things for people who have the ability to get in there, to access said schools or things of that nature. But if you don't, then you're kind of left to fend for yourself at times, depending on how that private school set up. But for the most part, public is money, private is not. Flip it. Private is money, public is, you don't pay to go there. Like, so like for us, we're a public charter. Nobody pays to get in our school. It's lottery based, but nobody has to pay anything to enter our school. It's just more about the lottery. So I think public and private, I keep repeating the same word, but it goes back to access. Like it's all about access. Like who can get into that school? And private schools tend to have more of a sense or the ability to say, no, you can't get into school. And I think that's the tough part. I think that's what doesn't sit well with a lot of people about private schools as well, because there is that thing where it's like, oh no, unfortunately we don't think you're the right person for this school. Instead of taking all kids and saying, all right, cool, we're bringing you in here. Let's figure out where you are and let's make sure we meet where you are. They're not saying they're not doing that at private, but there's another hurdle for people to jump over with private school and actually being accepted, versus a public where it's like, oh no, you are accepted because you're here.
Mm-hmm. So of those three types of schools, where does the child get the best education? In private, charter, public, where to be somewhere near equal ground with their peers, their white and their other peers? Where do they get the best opportunity to learn?
Assuming that if you just put it out there like this, if you say all public charters are made equal, like all charters are if they all have the same guidelines, the same stipulations, and things of that nature of what they're doing, it's still that's a tough one. Where do children get the best chance? Is that what you're saying?
Specifically, Black and brown children.
Honestly, I don't believe that. I guess it's dependent on the area, but off my experience, private school has not been that. Based off of what I've seen built and seen people do as so far, like that I've been closely connected with or in the vicinity of, especially in North Carolina. I don't know if I would say that private school is the ideal. I think if you were to take the aspects of that school and like, not saying that the curriculum isn't great, not saying, I would just say it's probably not the best because all those children aren't getting in. And just off the chance of getting in, I wouldn't be able to say that private schools are the most ideal, unless that private school was saying, oh no, we're only accepting children of color, and then that private school probably wouldn't survive for so long. But still, like, it's very doubtful that that's going to be the case. So I would lean more towards the public sector, but then we see public schools aren't the best. Like at times, like those public schools, depending on the school system, and here in North Carolina, you've got some ranges there where they're just like, some people might say Mecklenburg County schools. Some people say they're not great. Some people might love them, but it's dependent on where you are. So far, with my understanding of charters, especially being a part of a charter now, a public charter, I would say it's the best means of getting a good education for children of color, because you have the ability to grab. It's like, you know what, I like what that private school is doing with their curriculum. It looks great. We can take this on to utilize this while still following the state's guidelines, and as well, like, and merge that together into the perfect solution. So like for me, when I think of charters, I think of the ability to kind of flow in a different way to getting to the, like, and you're still getting to the same goal. You're still trying to make sure these children achieve their maximum potential. But I do like just understanding charters a little bit more from my vantage, and I'm biased because I'm thinking about whenever I think about it, I'm thinking about the charter I'm a part of at this point in time. Mm-hmm. But one of the goals is like you want to make sure that the learning is specific for that child. You want to make sure that child has a chance based off of what they need. And I feel like charters have a little bit more of wiggle room to do so, to personalize learning and things of that nature. But of course, all charters aren't made equal. And the purpose and the drive and the mission of it sometimes is missed. So while you might have charters on paper that look wonderful, that's a tough question. That's a tough one. That's a good question though. That's a really good question, but it's tough. And I'm curious. I'm curious if I got to go back and look at some of these other videos. I want to see, because I don't think I got a chance to see an entire one yet. I was kind of piecing here and there. I've got to see this question again from somebody else. I want to hear somebody else's input.
I haven't asked anybody else that, because no one else I've encountered have had the charter school.
The charter school experience, yeah.
Right. So I haven't asked anybody that question. But
I'm going to have to ask. I will go ask some other people that then now, just because. That's a good question.
Yeah.
I hope I answered it okay.
Yeah, absolutely, because I don't think there's a right answer, right? So,
right.
Every school has its own. It's like vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. Which one do you prefer?
Right.
Like that. But I think where I am right now in my mind, so we saw a man killed by a police officer. 2 weeks later, we see another man killed by a police officer. We see 2 college students tased. And that's just dealing with I don't even want to say race, but that's just dealing with an imbalance between people, right? So, you know, these people who have power and these people who don't have power, who become subject to the people with power. But what's really mind-boggling for me is where this starts, right? So, and I've said, if you want to listen to some of the teachers I've talked to, because one of the things that's really phenomenal to me is that the lowest paid people, besides the janitor, the bus driver, and those kind of people, are school teachers. And yet still, for all these brilliant children who walk through the Ivy Tower, it was an elementary school teacher to start with, you know, that started them, and we don't pay them equally. And then you bring into the mix children with different backgrounds, right? So some of their parents are affluent and can give them everything they need. Some of them are barely making it from end to end. You know, you've got all of these things, and no one seems to see that education is the foundation of success. If we don't educate, we don't go at it right the first time, we miss and we lose. You know, and I was talking to Aku about this earlier, you know, like, so I can't tell how many students I know that enrolled in a STEM degree program. You know, they were going to go get a STEM degree. And by the time they finished their sophomore, starting that curve toward their junior year, they change majors or drop out. And to me, that belongs solely on the shoulders of elementary education. Because
I can see it, yeah.
If I haven't given you all the tools just to do well, right? And so there was a study, I think it was in 2010, there was a study that said that more than 75% of the children who came into college was not prepared for the rigor of college. And it didn't talk about race or gender, it just said students were not prepared. And so now I'm a Black boy in school. And for whatever reasons that I am, you know, like I can't sit still, you know, I'm agitated, I've got things going on at home. And my teacher standing over there in the front of the room doing classroom management is expecting me to do this. And maybe I can't do this. So for whatever reason, she sends me out of the room, or he sends me out of the room. So now I miss some instruction time. I've got this stigma now because my classmates now think I'm this, you know.
I'm trouble.
Right. Or I'm a troublemaker. You know, so I've got these things stuck to me now, you know, and so now I've got to get my way all the way through high school and into the college doors. And if that time, that instruction I missed, if that time where I felt unsure, uncertain about myself, and I'm walking into the higher education academic space, what's my likelihood of being successful? You know, and I talked to my, your mother worked at East Carolina, but I talked to my doctoral advisor, you know, she's in one of these chats. And I told her, you know, so I have 3 degrees from a historically Black college. I have 1 from a PWI. And the PWI, the only reason why I got my doctorate degree, because my advisor was Black. And she understood my struggle. She understood where my strengths and weaknesses were. Whereas in most predominantly white colleges, and this might be true in historically Black colleges, but I didn't have any sense of this, I'm a 7-digit number. And my 7-digit number that describes who I am would be blind grading on a curve, and all those things. But there are going to be some things about me that when I walk in that door, I'm going to feel some kind of way. And then my peer or my colleague looking at me are wondering, did I get here on merit, or was I here because of some quota or something like that? So I've got all of that going against me when I walk in the door. And so one of the reasons why it's so important to have this discussion about education is because I think people need to have these discussions regularly about education, not just say, well, we got a curriculum, we're going to stand in front of the classroom, we're going to teach, we're going to put all these tools out here, we're going to give them Chromebooks, iMacs, Mac laptops, whatever it is I'm going to give you. But if you haven't given me the foundation, how am I successful? And that's a question. How am I successful? How do I make it to the next level? How do I change my family's economic health? How do I do that?
I think that's spot on. Like, if in fact, foundation's everything. foundation is everything. If you build a house on rocky foundation, the house will not exist after a certain point in time. It will crumble and fail. The reason why like if you think about the system, the systematic, like what we have now, like the reason why racism is so prevalent is because the country was built on it. That was built on the back of it. That's what gave it power. That's what gave it merit. That's what gave it everything that it was to get started. So of course, that's the foundation. It's within the foundation. So like you said, without a so to answer your question, if in fact it is deemed that I don't know, like I'll say this because my brother-in-law is in Tennessee. He's a principal, and the one thing he did, he got brought into a school that was out of this network of schools. It was one of the lowest. He got in, he observed, and once he observed what was happening, and he got some good, he evaluated the teachers and whatnot, and saw where they were. Anybody that he recognized was not there to push that foundational level of each and every child in that classroom, he got rid of.
Yeah.
Because there's other people, there's so many teachers out there without jobs, that are good teachers, but because you have some people that are actually that have been there for a while, and they're like, oh yeah, well, we're going to keep them on because of they've been here for a while, not necessarily recognizing, is this person still good for that? Are they still good are they still good at building foundations? Unless you have someone who's good at that, it's not going to work. And I will say this too, that does not just say teachers, bad teacher, like bad teacher, get them out of here. No one's perfect at teaching when they start teaching. No one.
Right.
No one just comes into a classroom and is like, great, I fresh out of school, I can come in and do whatever it is. No, like I have no problems. I'm the best teacher ever, day one, year one. No, it takes guidance. It takes communication. It takes effective leadership also to make sure that person is meeting the grounds of what they're doing and doing what they're supposed to do. But it also takes a leader that is cognizant of what's going on, like that is willing to go in and shake those things up. I think you've got to have somebody willing to step out and do something different to make sure that each of those children are represented and actually pushed and to the goals that they should be personally for them. Without that, it's not going to happen. Without having somebody willing to build that foundation, we're going to set up kids for failure from here on out. And I think that's where you have, like, when you have an underperforming school, while yes, it's on teachers, it's also just as much as on leadership as everybody else. And I one of the things I cringe at is when people use the socioeconomics as an excuse versus a tool. Because anybody's background, anything that anybody's ever been through, anything that is a part of their own individual foundation, which you need to understand as a teacher or an educator in general. And I'll say educator, so it's not just teachers. Educators kind of cover everything. I lost my train of thought.
You're not even old enough to have lost your train of thought. Wait till you get in your 60s, then you can start losing your train of thought. You're just a baby. Come on now.
Oh man, I was on it too. I was on a wave. I had it. I was there. I was on my way. Man.
Okay. Well, let me ask you another question, and maybe it'll come back to you. You can interject. Okay, so if you were a genie and you could wave your wand and make education good for everyone, what would that waving of the wand result in? What change would you make to education that is not now reaching the entire populace who are required to go to school, at least to elementary to high school?
Yes, that's another good one. I would say, all right, so I guess step one, I would say being able to say, all right, bet every teacher, every educator is willing and able to reach every single student in their class, regardless of their background. And ensuring that you've taken where they're coming from into consideration with what you're trying to make them reach. Because if you don't do that, like the idea of like, oh, I'm colorblind, which is a term I can't, I hate it. I can't stand it. I can't say I hate many things, but I hate the term colorblind because you're not seeing this child for who they are. And I like step one, if I could just wave a wand, I think because I've seen teachers go into a classroom, just like what you said earlier. The kid's not listening. The kid's like he's irritable. He's upset. He's not responding to you effectively. So the response, you have a few things you can respond like, and
You froze.
and frequently use it out. But, I froze.
You froze.
Oh no, hold on.
You're okay. You're okay.
No, I'm about to fix it because I see what it is. I have an issue every once in a while. It'll jump to the extension down the hallway and not stay on the right Wi-Fi. I'm gonna switch it. It's gonna briefly pause, and I'm gonna come right back. Let me know you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. All right. So I don't know how much. I don't know how much it was delayed there, but basically, you have that teacher who can make the decision whether to sit that kid out because they're not doing what they're expecting them to do, or you can have that teacher that's like, why are they responding in this way, and how can I help? Not this child is disrespecting me. I am a kindergarten teacher, and this child is not sitting in their chair like they should. It's a kindergarten. They have a hard time understanding. So what am I going to do to make sure that I know this child is getting what they need? It's not sitting them outside the class. It's not calling someone to take them to let them calm down because they're not behaving. It takes some more digging. It takes a little bit more of a digging deep mentality. You've got to like go that extra step. You've got to do whatever it takes for that kid. So I would say, if anything, I would instill a do what it takes mentality in every teacher, every administrator, period, across the board, and do whatever it takes to a fault, because then you know at the very least your class is good.
Yeah.
Your grade level is good. Even your teachers are good, because teachers, just like children, come in and are same place. If you have a first year teacher, that is your kindergartner coming in your class, in your school.
Yep.
And without pushing them along and giving them the appropriate resources and all that good knowledge, so for them to grow, they're on their own.
Right. That's great. So you have 4 minutes, all yours. However you want to end this.
I'll say this. Thank you for actually considering me for this. I love this. I love the conversation. And much like you said earlier, it takes this conversation continuing and not ending at this point in time. And I would love to continue this and push others to join the same conversation, because it's necessary for people to be able to get on and speak and at least understand, or have that moment to hash it out, to put it out there, because this is how plans start. This is how change happens. Because you get a collective of people from all over the place having the same conversation. Before you know it, it spreads.
Right.
So I love this. I love it. This was awesome, and I just hope that, for me, I hope that I'm as effective in communicating and carrying on a conversation somewhat similar to this moving forward with my coworkers and my friends and family and things of that nature. Because this is something that has to be communicated throughout the spectrum. It can't just be us.
Right.
Like it's a community. It's like you said. It takes a community. It takes that's real. So yeah.
You know, I hope you subscribe to the channel, and I hope you share with other people and tell other people to have this conversation. Earlier this morning, I spoke with one of your fraternity brothers. I don't know if you know Zach Hawkins, but he is, he's a part of the North Carolina legislature, and he had 3 points, and his points was education, Medicare, and voting. And I think when you get a chance to listen to his, it's really profound to hear his thoughts about education. And I think these conversations, why I did this was because I felt like I didn't have a voice. I had watched Mr. Floyd die so many times. I had gotten to the point where I just couldn't even literally get out of the bed because I was just so sad and depressed. But, starting these chats is to give everybody a chance to talk about what they're good at, what they know, so that the language can continue to grow till we get to a place where people recognize, one, we're all human, and two, we all have similar ideals. And so instead of highlighting what makes us different, what brings us closer together. And so these chats, they're black, white, blue, green, and orange. I don't have any person of color I'm trying to talk to, whether they're black or white or whatever. I want to talk to everybody and have their ideas out there. And the reason why they're called diversity chats is not about to talk about black and brown necessarily, but they talk about diversity of thought, diversity of action, diversity of color, but that we are continuing to have these conversations over and over again until we see change. And that to me is what must happen. We must have change. And education to me is where you start. If you don't start there, you can't go anywhere else. Some of your other fraternity brothers that are police officers said that the police officers need to be retrained. That's still education. Everything resides and lives in education. And if we don't see how to correct that, we keep making the same mistakes over and over again.
That's true.
Yep.
What is that? What's the quote? If you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Spot on.
Absolutely.
Spot on.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Carraway. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
I see how far I've fallen down in your, like list, because
you have not fallen anywhere.
And you don't respond to me. I have to beg, please. I have to send Skip after you. I said, Skip, can you talk to Mitch? He won't answer my calls. I'm like, okay, I see how this works now.
Listen, please understand and know it is not like that. Love you to death and always. So please understand it is not like that. I will say it has been insanely crazy on my end trying. We're opening up a new school and this mess has been. That's why I hadn't eaten today, because I was on the phone all day trying to get the network set up for this new school, and with about 3 different people that needed to be on the phone at the same time and trying to make sure they all got in at the same time. So yeah, it was been an interesting day, but it's been like that every day.
Yeah.
Like I'm waiting for the day where it's like, okay, slow down. Like
no.
Cool keeps, I think Cool and my mom keep talking about the idea of, do you ever have a day off? And I'm like, I laugh, and then I'm like, well, maybe not.
Yeah.
And I tend to go until like I crash. All of a sudden, like out of the blue, I have a day where I have a migraine and it takes me out for the day. And I know why, because I'm overworking, but it has to be done. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, my dear. Very good to see you.
Thank you for having me. You as well, and let's get these going.
Absolutely. And happy birthday to the young man. I understand that they're making you age by the day, 6 and 9 now?
Yes.
I mean, that's amazing. Everett will be 22 in November.
I know. But see, that's what I was trying to figure out. When did I meet Everett? Like, I can't remember. I remember him being tiny. He was small, but I can't remember the age.
Probably within his first year of birth, because I think you and Skip were, Skip was kind of mentoring you as you were going along your teaching path. And so because of that, you two were together a lot. So, but, he was very, very young.
How old now?
He will be 22 in November.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because Skip and I were linked up as early as 2003, 2004. I remember us having classes.
Everett was born in 1998.
So he was 6.
Yeah. All I can say to you is that from the day they start walking, the time to they're an adult is like a day. It goes by so fast. I mean, you look at your little teeny weeny baby, your little bundle of joy, and all of a sudden your bundle of joy is like 6'4" and tall and like looking down at you. Mom, you're so short. I'm like, okay, if I brought
Yeah,
you in this world now,
exactly.
short.
I think it's I think for me it's conversation. I see them more now than I ever have.
Mhm.
Like with not going to work. But I think what's gotten me has been, which I know, like, oh man, they're growing up, is the conversation. And like my 5-year-old, now 6-year-old, like hearing him say certain things and like me walk by and I'm like, wait, what? Like,
Right.
why are you speaking like this? Why do you sound so like, why do you sound this good right now? You're not supposed to be talking like this. I'm like, oh, buddy, yeah, yeah, he is.
Yes, he is.
So,
Yes, he
yeah.
is. Yep.
So,
Thank
yeah.
you, darling.
Thank
And
you.
believe me, I'm going to harass you again. We'll come back and revisit this as we get into the
Let's
school
do it.
year. Once we figure out what schools they're going to do, are they going to go back, or
Yeah,
we're going to
whatever
figure out
that's going to be.
how to navigate health issues in the Black and Brown community and the need for education. So we will do this again, and I'll have Skip call you so
Good.
you can respond to me. So
No, just send me the message. I'm on it. I'll be better. That's the only thing I can be. I will be better. I promise that. I will do better.
yes, I know you love me, and I love you. So we've been together for a very
Most
long
definitely.
time, and always
Long
will
time.
be. So but I still have to harass you. It doesn't end up being a
It
good
would it
day.
would it would it wouldn't be right if you didn't.
Exactly, because I have to remind you that you are a Q, which is, what is that exactly? Is that like a shoe or something? Like you make a shoe called a Q or something? Bye, darling.
Bye. Love you.
I love you too. Bye.